problem of predators in nursing homes. Hi, I'm Chris Casteel in the Washington Bureau, and I have with me today Wes Bledsoe, who's a longtime advocate for getting predators out of nursing homes, and he's taken his cause from the state capitol in Oklahoma to Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Mr. Bledsoe, thanks so much for coming in. You've been involved in this issue for a while. You actually started the generation of interest in this issue a few years ago. Tell me how you got interested in this yourself and what you've been working on.
Absolutely, Chris, and it's a pleasure to be here. Received a call about violent offenders found in competent stand trial being placed to live in nursing homes by the order of district court judges. That was about 4 years in my advocacy for people in long-term care facilities. And I thought it was shocking. And what we found was that these offenders are being placed in these facilities by the order of district court judges had shot police officers 4 times, or they had shot and killed their grandmother with a shotgun, or had shot their wife in the head with a handgun. And in one case, there's a fellow that had sexually molested a child, a 3-year-old, and he was having sex with his dog. And these are the kind of guys who are being placed to live in nursing homes with your loved ones in mind. So we started looking at the problem. We found it wasn't just the violent offenders found in competent stand trial. We found inmates, parolees, registered sex offenders. Sex offenders are not required to register, convicted felons. And then there's this whole group of assailants in nursing homes who assault others, but they're never charged because either the assailant or the victim are of diminished mental capacity. So that was the groups that we started looking at. And we started tracking the easiest group to track, and that's the registered sex offenders, because most states have an online sex offender registry. And we were able to download databases from the Medicare.gov website. And we started searching through the online sex offender registries and started matching offenders. And over the last 4 years, we've found approximately 1,600 registered sex offenders living as residents in long-term care facilities.
And this is over what time period?
Over the last 4 years. Over the last 4 years. We know that that's not all of them, because not all sex offenders are required to register. Not all registered sex offenders are posted online in every state. Some, it's just a handful of their most at-risk sex offenders that they post. Others, they post the level 3 high risk. Others, they post the level 3 and level 2. Very few, unlike Oklahoma, post all 3 levels, the high risk, moderate risk, and low risk sex offenders. So there's more sex offenders in facilities than even what we're aware of right now.
Now, you worked for years to get legislation passed in the state capitol, and I guess Governor Henry recently signed a bill that was co-authored by, I guess, a Shawnee lawmaker who's going to be testifying with you tomorrow. Tell me about that legislation.
Incredible legislation, first of its kind in the United States. And I just have to take my hat off to Representative Casteel from Shawnee. He authored the bill. Senator Tom Adelson from Tulsa co-sponsored the bill on the Senate side. About 10% of the legislature co-sponsored the bill, signed onto the bill. It passed every committee vote, every chamber unanimously. The governor signed it on the 10th of last month. And what it does is it calls for the Department of Health, which is the state regulatory agency in Oklahoma, to put together a request for proposal and let a private operator bid on this facility. That the State Department of Health will help set up some of the requirements of what needs to go into this facility. And a private operator will bid on it and put either a new facility together or take over and modify an existing facility and run and administer a facility for level 3 high risk and level 2 moderate risk sex offenders.
And how big do you think this would be? You talked about over 1,000 that you were able to identify that were living in nursing homes. Would it need to be big enough to hold that many, or how many people are we talking about?
The 1,600 we've found have been across the country. In Oklahoma, we've found 54 to date in the last 4 years, 30 in our last screening of Oklahoma. So we'll see if we have 30. I believe if we do some other things like require criminal background checks, which will be part of our recommendations to Congress when we talk with them tomorrow, then we'll see that we'll have a need for more. Certainly the Department of Corrections provided information to a committee hearing last fall that said literally thousands of convicted felons are going to be moving out of the prison system, and many of these are older offenders. So we're likely to see more, an increase of violent and sexual predators who are going to require long-term care. and they'll be moving into these facilities.
Now, you and Representative Steele are going to testify before a subcommittee, House subcommittee tomorrow, in which Representative Mary Fallon sits. Are you trying to create awareness for this? Are you trying to get national legislation? What's the goal of being here this week?
The goal is to create awareness. Awareness on Capitol Hill that we have a huge problem where we have a lot of young, violent, and sexual offenders living as residents in nursing homes, that even older offenders are a problem in these facilities. We've had 83, 86, and even in a 90-year-old registered sex offenders who have assaulted other residents in facilities. We've debunked every myth, every justification used by state, county, and local officials to place these kinds of predators in these facilities. So one, we need to create awareness on Capitol Hill. Two, we need to create awareness at the state level and at the local level. Those who are placing these offenders in facilities need to know what they're doing to the other residents when they put them in there. Hopefully, other states will follow Oklahoma's lead with this awareness and take this bill that Representative Steele authored and use that as a piece of model legislation, much like the methamphetamine laws that Oklahoma passed a few years ago that have been a wonderful model for other states to follow. And then the third area is create awareness in the public. Awareness that people need to ask questions about what kind of residents are actually in these facilities before they place their loved one in there. You'll hear testimony tomorrow from a lady in Florida who was just looking for a safe place for her mother. She was afraid that with her advancing dementia that she could be raped in her neighborhood or in her home. So she moved her into a nursing home in Jacksonville, Florida, and when she did, she found that her mother was raped not long after by a man who had a long criminal history, including convictions on 2 sex crimes. So the public needs to be aware, and hopefully the public will pick up their phones and get on those computers and send emails to those congressional leaders here in Washington, D.C., as well as to their state legislators and say, we want a safe environment for our loved ones in long-term care. We want to have a separate facility for offenders, and we want to follow the recommendations that Wes Bledsoe and his group of Perfect Cause have in making these facilities safer for our loved ones.
Thanks so much for coming in, and good luck. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity.
Look for more on this story in the Oklahoman.